Welcome to episode 54 of Military Veterans Podcast, where we talk to veterans to learn about their stories and experiences. And today we're joined by Joe Hursey.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon. How are you doing? You all right?
I'm good, Joe. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Long time no see and here. It's nice to catch up, actually.
Yeah, we'll get into this during your episode, but it's been about 5 years, I think, since we saw each other in person, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think the last time we saw each other was we were getting on a tube or something like that.
In London.
We were going so low in London.
Yeah. For Remembrance, wasn't it? So I think this Remembrance this year.
Yeah, will be
we're recording this in July of 2024.
Yeah.
So I think it was like 2019.
It
something
must.
like that. It was a long time ago.
Long ago. Yeah.
But anyway, Joe, thanks so much for coming on the show. And yeah, setting up in your lovely house has taken a bit of time, but we've got it sorted and it looks pretty good.
It does. It now transforms into a little studio. I quite like it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
And thank you for coming as well.
That's all right.
Thank you.
No worries. So as every episode, we do start by the 4 questions, which is a summary of what we're going to go into.
Yeah.
But before we do that, this is going to go live on the 10th of January 2025.
Okay.
So it's like the first episode of the year 2025. So that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Hopefully it's a good episode.
Good episode.
People listening.
I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it will be.
I'm sure.
I'm
sure.
So. Okay, so the 4 questions are, I'll give you them all at one time. So when did you join the military? What service and branch did you join? How long did you serve for? And what rank did you get to?
Yeah, so I joined in 1995. I served in the army.
British Army?
The British Army,
just in case.
Yeah, it was the British Army. And I did it was just shy of 24, but I round it up to 24 years, but it was 23 and 8 months.
Okay.
And I reached the rank of Staff Sergeant.
Nice. So I think for the purpose of this, we'll say 24 years, I think.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I don't like to say that I did 24 and actually I did 23 and 8 months, but there are some people that might be a bit picky.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I do round it up to 24, so yeah.
And in the British Army, which part of the British Army?
So I was involved in logistics. So I was part of the Royal Logistic Corps. I was a driver. That was my trade I went into.
Trade. Cool.
Yeah.
All
and
right.
then as I've progressed, obviously did other jobs.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And we'll hear more about that for sure as we get into your episodes. So let's rewind the clock.
Okay.
Where were you born and where did you grow up?
So I was born in Hertfordshire, the QE2 hospital, which is now not a hospital. And I lived in Welwyn Garden City for about 11 years. And then I moved when I was in just about to start secondary school. I went to Monkswalk School. And I then moved to Welwyn Village, so a little village outside Welwyn Garden. Yeah, and then until I joined the army at 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those younger years, school life, pretty cool. Did you enjoy it? Or?
No, I hated school.
You hated school?
Hated school. I think most squaddies or most soldiers, people who join the MOD, hated school. But I didn't really excel at school. I was always I did really well at sports.
Okay.
And I did really well at drama, believe it or not. I got an A in both of those, but everything else I failed.
Right.
I say failed. I did attempt them, but I wasn't academic. I've never been academic. Although now I'm doing a degree in psychology, but I'm older now. But yeah, I was never academic at school. All my teachers always said I'd never amount to anything. And they were pretty much right, really, in the sense of academic. But yeah, I didn't like school. I was bullied quite a lot.
Okay.
So I think because I was a little bit, not odd, but I was different from everybody else. And I didn't do very well at school. I had minimal amount of friends. I was kind of, just me, I think.
Yeah.
But my junior school, my primary school, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I remember little aspects of it, obviously, because you're still young. But I do remember that. I'm still in touch with some of the people I went to school with as well.
Nice.
It's quite nice,
nice.
yeah.
So
I had a good upbringing, a really good background.
Okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
Really nice.
And you mentioned about joining at 21. Did you have anybody within your family that was in the military, and therefore that enticed you, maybe?
Yeah, I say it enticed me. I always said I would never join the army.
Okay.
So I went through life with most of my family being in the army. My uncle, my aunt. In fact, it's probably easier for me to say the two people that weren't in the army or the services was my brother and my mum. Everybody else was, even my cousins and everything. So I didn't want to join the military. It was something I didn't want to do. I wanted to go against the grain, funny enough. I wanted to go against the grain and do something different. So I did. I was in the army cadets. I was in the army cadets from like 13 all the way up to 18.
Okay.
So for me, that was the army. I was happy with that. And I tried to get into the police force, but they weren't recruiting at the time. So I then tried the fire brigade, but because I wore glasses at that time, you're talking obviously a long time ago because I'm really old. They didn't recruit me because we had glasses. Well, I had glasses, so that was that. So I was a store detective. I became a store detective, still doing the cadets as well. I loved it, absolutely loved the job. But I was walking past the Army Careers Office in St Albans, and I popped in, thought I'd just see how it goes. And then 24 years later, here I am.
No way.
Yeah, broken.
Can you remember what that was like when you walked into the careers office?
Yeah, I remember. I was actually walking down. I came out of Woolworths because we had a shop called Woolworths. Yeah,
R.I.P.
Yeah, I love Woolworths. Pick and mix. Yeah, and as a store detective, I was nicking children who were nicking penny sweets and stuff. And I walked down the hill and I passed it about 4 times. I had a burger in my hand, and it was on the left-hand side. And I thought I'll just pop in, and I popped in, and that was that. 24 years later, I joined up. 6 months later, after me signing on a dotted line, I went home and I said to my mum and dad, I said, "Oh, I think I'm going to be joining the army." And they were like, "Okay, no problems." You know, I think it was going to happen. It was expected, I think.
And was your dad still in at that point?
No, my dad got out.
Right.
I think he was very quiet about his army service, and I think my DBS and what have you took a bit of a time, because I'm sure that the story is that he was in the reserves, as it was back then, in SAS, but
Okay.
there's nothing else spoke about it. I remember seeing a ghillie suit, and I remember seeing little bits and bobs around the house, but when I did question him, it was all very, very kept, we were told to not talk about it. And
Right.
so I don't know if it was just whether he didn't want to talk about it or he wasn't allowed to. But then he unfortunately passed away, so I don't really know too much about it. But my mum says that he was in the reserves as a SAS. So,
Okay.
but that's all So yeah, it was quite interesting. His brother was in the Navy, and
Right.
my mum's side, her 2 brothers joined the army and the RAF, and so yeah, got a very military. So the answer to your question, in a roundabout way, is yes. I've got lots of military in my family. Yeah.
And so when you went in, I'm guessing it was probably not too dissimilar to when I joined in 2000.
Yeah.
At 99, 2000. And there was the barb test, things like that you had to do, like little tests.
Yeah.
So did you do something similar, or did you know that you were going to be part of the logistics part?
No. So, excuse me. No, I went in and I had no idea actually what to expect, to be fair.
Okay.
And so I sat in front of this old BBC computer. I am that old. We had to there was a little ball that went from left to right, and then there was a screen, so you couldn't see where the ball would land. So we had to then push on the screen to where you thought the ball would land. So it was kind of coming in at an angle.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was a perception exam, but I didn't do very well at that. As I say, I wasn't academic, so when it came to all that kind of stuff, I was a bit dim, I think would be the word. But I was offered some really good jobs. I was offered combat engineer in the engineers, or combat driver. Sorry, it was sold to me as. I was offered something to do with the dog section. And then I was offered the Royal Logistic Corps. I think they must have been desperate, because I think they were just taking anybody and everybody. I chose, within the RLC itself, I chose to be an air dispatcher, because I like the idea of leaning out the back of helicopters and stuff, and That was where I was going to be. However, when I went to Pirbright, I was when I went to Pirbright, I was told that they weren't recruiting in their dispatch, so I had to pick another trade, and
Right.
so I went for driver. I say it like it's really bad. I wish I'd actually stuck it out and gone with air dispatch, but hey ho, it is what it is.
So you mentioned Deepcut there, right?
Yeah.
Is that that's your trade training type stuff, right?
Yeah.
So before you got there, you would have done basic training,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And where did you do that?
So I did basic training, did 10 weeks at Pirbright. And I have to say, it was the best 10 weeks of my entire life. I loved it, yeah. Obviously, I wouldn't be able to do it now. I'm totally broken, but I absolutely loved it. It was like, I don't know, even now, you can't see, but I'm smiling because the friends that you made during those 10 weeks, they're with you for life. And I'm still in touch with some of them on social media. And yeah, it was a really, really good time. And actually, it was at Pirbright I found out that one of my instructors was a member of my family.
Really?
So my family name is Bullock.
Okay.
And he was Brian Bullock. And I thought, because it's quite an unusual name, I thought, why? They've got to be somewhere that they are linked. Anyway, we did a bit of family history, and it turns out that his granddad was my granddad's brother. So
wow.
I don't really know how it happened, but
Yeah.
I think one or two of them were a bit keen on ladies, shall we say.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's lots of Bullocks, lots of family members that we didn't know there. But when you see him, he actually looks like my uncle. So it's very odd. Very strange, yeah. So, yeah, I did my basic training at 10 weeks at Pirbright. And then from Pirbright, we moved down the road to the dreaded Deepcut, which is now gone.
But before you talk about Deepcut, I just want to ask, 10 weeks, you said you loved it.
Yeah.
Anything that stood out, like a standout moment for basic training? If anybody's listened to this that are thinking of like joining up, what stands out to you from your time that you really, really remember?
God, there's so many. I think because I joined at 20, I was 21 when I was there. So I joined at 20, so I had a bit of life experience. So I kind of, and also being in the Army Cadets as well, I kind of knew what to expect, if you like, and how they're going to talk to you. And of course, back in the day when I first joined, we were shouted at for smiling. We were shouted at for looking the wrong way. And I think the biggest thing that I could honestly say about that, it moulded me. It moulded me to who I am now and who I am today. Because I think out of everything and anything, it's taught me how to adapt and overcome. And obviously, later on, hopefully on today, we'll find out how I adapted and overcome in my daily life now. Because the idea of basic training is they want to strip you back down to somewhere where they can remold you into a soldier, take you from a civvy to a military person. And yeah, so I think what's the biggest thing? I think there's just the camaraderie and the laugh and the laugh we had when we was in training was just, no one can take that away from me. It's just so much fun. And the friends, I think,
That's
friends,
cool. That's cool.
It was good fun.
Was you a good shot?
I got best shot actually.
There you go. I didn't know that was the case.
I am quite. I'm one of these that kind of doesn't sort of say about my achievements. I think because I don't know. I am proud of them.
We're going to blow your trumpet.
Yeah, I know, but I think I'm just so unassuming. I'm really humble. I kind of just go, yeah, it's fine,
But best shot.
Yeah, I did get best shot. I was down for best recruit, but because I got best shot, they gave best recruit to somebody else. So yeah, I was happy with best shot. Yeah,
Nice,
that's all right.
nice.
Nice skill, really, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to deep cut. So you said about the dreaded deep cut.
Yeah.
But when you joined, was it the dreaded deep cut at that moment?
Yeah, it was. Unfortunately, Deepcut had a history of bullying. There were three or four deaths occurred there. Some are saying, it's been speculated that some of them were murders and some of them were suicides. It's been recorded that they were suicides. But there's been a lot of publicity about Deepcut. Even prior to me going to Deepcut was a lot of publicity as well. And actually on the 27th of November, a soldier committed suicide. The only reason I remember it, because that's my birthday. And then on the 9th of December, we passed out from Pirbright. We had a long weekend and then we ended up at Deepcut. So Deepcut was there for our sort of trade training. In all honesty, it wasn't the nicest of places. There was a lot of bullying going on there. Myself, I wasn't in for the bullying, but I did see others get bullied by it, by certain particular people who were involved in the press and have been involved in the whole documentaries and all that kind of stuff. And there's the findings of it has been mentioned. This person has been mentioned. So, it was an awful place to be. I hated every minute of it. It is complete contrast to being at Pirbright for 10 weeks and then going to Deepcut. And, it wasn't the best. It was probably my worst time of my army career.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long was you there for?
Luckily enough, I was only there for about 5 to 6 weeks, but there were some people there for a year and 2 years. Yeah, like so when you go to Deepcut, if you go into your trade training, if you're a supply controller, you do your training at Deepcut. If you're a driver, you go to Leconfield, which I think most of the British Army go to Leconfield to do their driver training, so I was able to get away from Deepcut. We had pioneers with us who were the infantry of the RLC. They're no longer, I believe, but they finished Pirbright, and then they went up to Catterick. So really, it was the supply controllers or the supply sort of trade that stayed at Deepcut, but everybody else was able to get out.
Okay.
And then once you finish your trade, you got to Leconfield. For me, I was up there for about 10 weeks. I loved it up there. Again, it was pretty boring every day, just driving this truck and you just get it done. And then once you've done your trade training, you then get posted. So the onus is really on you to get out there, get it sorted, and then get your training done. Then you can get posted.
Yeah.
So I was lucky. I was very lucky.
Okay.
Yeah.
So short stint at Deepcut. Then you mentioned about doing driver training and stuff up at Leconfield, and as that was my trade as well in the Royal Engineers. I was up there a lot. Went back for multiple courses. You do quad bike courses up there, like you do anything to do with pretty much most vehicles. I mean, there are some that are different locations, but most vehicles are done up there. Different location, isn't it? Like out of the way.
Yeah. Again, it is in the middle of nowhere, isn't it? It's like, I mean, the town itself is quite good, but
Beverley.
Yeah.
Beverley. I haven't said that for a while.
Yeah. Do you remember when we used to go out on a Friday night, and they used to come down with the 4-tonners, and they used to get in the, basically the RMP would be there trying to get people in the back of 4-tonners. You can't do that now, but
no.
But that was great. That was our ride home. I did like Leconfield. It was a good laugh.
Then if you were feeling like extra spendy, let's say, to spend your money, you might go down to Hull.
I never went to Hull.
Hull. You miss the H if you're from there.
Yeah, I never went to Hull. I could never afford it. I spent my money on drink and all the rest of it. Yeah, so it was. But I had a good time there actually.
Yeah,
met lots of different people, and I think really that was the beginning of my military career. You know, that was the kind of bit where I realised that I'm going to see different people every day, and I'm going to be on I was on a working camp. So for me, it was my basic training for driving. So I did enjoy it.
And if I'm doing right in the maths, that was like early 96.
Yes, yeah.
So that would have been like winter.
Yeah.
And I think I did my train there as well in winter time. So you had to go up and bloody scrape all the ice off of the trucks before you.
Well, of course, the trucks were on the airfield, weren't they?
Yeah.
So of course it was completely open. It was bloody freezing, wasn't it? And of course we were in uniform. We didn't have now they've got like jackets they can wear underneath. We didn't have any of that.
No.
We couldn't wait to get in the trucks and drive.
So I obviously joined a bit after you. When I went there, they had civvy trucks like red and blue and
yeah.
What is that? Red and blue,
they're
or was there white
blue,
ones?
yellow, and white.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah. That's right. Yeah, red, white, yellow, and blue. I think.
And you get given a number. You have to go out with your mate.
Yeah, and then your driving instructor was some civvy who'd been in the army and.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah. I can't remember the name of mine, but. I do remember.
And then you move on
it.
to trailers.
Yeah.
So then you had a trailer attached to it.
Yeah.
And then you pass C, and then you do C plus E.
Yeah. But then you do. If you didn't have your car, you went on to car.
The car.
Then a car and trailer.
Yeah.
Then I had grandfather rights, so for my license, I didn't have to do minibus.
Ooh.
So I had grandfather rights on my license. Before a certain time, if you had your license before that time, you were able to drive a minibus. So they call it grandfather rights, and so I was able to drive a minibus. I can't think of anything else that I drove up there. I think it was just truck trailer.
Yeah. I don't know if this was RLC related or not. I feel like it must be. I feel like all drivers in the British Army do this.
Yeah.
But you then move on to the green vehicles.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
God, yeah. I completely forgot about that.
So then you go
Makes
onto the
sense.
green vehicles, and
Yeah.
you learn how to drive the Bedford or the
Yeah.
DAF or whatever it was. And then
First
they take
parade it and stuff like
first
that.
parade it, all that good
Yeah.
stuff. How to change a tyre
Yeah.
or a wheel. And then they put them on these what do they call
Like
them?
they're like bays, aren't they? Where they drive over it and you've got to pick out faults.
Pick out faults.
Yeah, fault finding.
Then there's another thing where they put them on these like stilt things or like stabilizers.
Yeah.
So when you're driving, it will pretend it will aquaplane.
Yeah, that's right. And you got to act to it. Oh my God.
On a big massive
I
truck.
completely forgot about that. Oh my God, yeah. And then I went back there actually to do a staff car course, and that was basically to drive VIPs and stuff. And that was another really good course actually. Yeah.
And like these fake people would come out.
Yeah,
and they'd do
and to shoot them, and it was really good fun. All these things that actually is only then you just remember you talking about the aquaplane, and then I was like, oh my God, yeah.
Or you go around a roundabout and it's fine. Oh, oversteer, understeer. Like, it's really clever that they could do this on a truck, like a British truck, military truck, not a civvy.
No, and if you think about it, back in that day as well. Imagine what they're doing now.
Yeah.
We thought that was clever in the 90s.
And then there was a burger van.
Oh my God. Oh my God, yeah.
On the airfield.
Oh, it stunk, didn't it?
But everybody went there on their breaks to
Yeah.
get food.
Oh my God. Well, I completely forgot about that. And we had a Scottish guy who was our RSM, and he was really skinny. Nobody could ever hear what he was saying because his accent was really strong. But also there was a lot of people at Leconfield, and he'd be shouting and screaming at us, and we were going, what did he say? What did he say? What did he say? Because no one could hear him. Oh my God. Yeah, that's some really good
He did
memories
massive
there.
parades every morning.
Yeah, every Monday morning, wasn't
Every
it?
Monday morning. I remember, I can't remember his name right now.
On the airfield as well, which was
and on the
fucking
airfield,
freezing. Yeah.
But because you're there for so long, you're talking months.
Yeah.
Sometimes people go off and want to do things. So I remember this one guy. We're not in touch anymore, and I can't remember his name. But he got his tongue pierced.
Oh.
But it's swollen, so he couldn't say "sir" or whatever you have to say. So we, when they said his name, we covered for him. And it was like "sir."
Oh, I love it. I had one friend who went out one day on a Saturday just into Hull, and he ended up buying 2 houses. He just came back. He randomly came back and he goes, "Oh, by the way, Joe, I've just bought 2 houses." I was like, "As you do on a Saturday." And he's still got those 2 houses as well.
Yeah.
Really random, isn't it?
It is.
It's just so many things you remember, little stupid stuff like that.
But it's only really drivers that can
I can relate to it.
can relate to that because you're there for so long. Other people go out there for a quick course.
The accommodation was bad as well, wasn't it?
Oh, it was shit.
Yeah, it was crap.
Yeah.
I remember always getting. They didn't get the guard rate at the weekend. So if you most time you got the weekends off. But if you messed up or you had a room inspection on Fridays, didn't they? A block inspection, which is fair enough because obviously everyone disappears off for the weekend. And I always remember getting spammed on a Friday night. Well, not always, but most nights getting spammed on a Friday night because they couldn't cover the guard for the Saturday. So literally nearly every other weekend I was on guard Saturday.
Yeah.
It used to really piss me off. I say I could bring a lawsuit against them now, probably. But yeah, I remember one time they found a hair on the sink, and it was like a long ginger hair. I don't have long hair, and it's definitely not ginger. And the full screw that was there, she was like, "That's your hair, and I was like, "No, it's not. It is your fucking hair. You're on duty this weekend." And I thought, they just needed someone.
They just.
Why don't you just tell me?
Yeah.
You need someone for guard. You're on it. Okay.
My eyes just went really wide there when you're talking about guard. So my training ran over Christmas, and I was dicked to be on guard over Christmas. So the whole of camp, packed up, everybody went on leave to go home, and I was there for Christmas, 10 of us.
That's grim, isn't it?
But it snowed.
Oh.
Christmas Day.
Oh, did it?
Stagging on the front gate. And it snowed.
That's magical. Grim but magical.
Oh,
of all places
hell.
as well.
I know.
Oh man, that must have been awesome.
It was shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably about a dozen of us, if that, looking after the camp.
Oh, I'm jealous. I wish I was there.
Good times.
Good times.
Cool. So after there, you talk
Yes.
about that's the start of your army career.
Yeah.
And you get a first posting.
Yeah.
So where'd you go?
My first posting, I didn't want Germany. I didn't want overseas, so I got overseas. I got Germany. It was really I think also, although I was older, I didn't want to be far away from my family. I'm very close to all my family, and I didn't want to be in another country, what I perceived as being on my own. I look back at it now and I think, my God, what was I doing? You know, what was I thinking? I got Germany, got 7 Transport Regiment RLC. My first in Bielefeld in Germany.
Bielefeld,
Yeah,
okay.
and I have to say it was awesome. It was amazing. I remember getting my posting order came through whilst I was at. I'd finished my training, then went back to Deepcut. And then my first training was, my first posting, it came out, Gav Gaviscon, and he came out and he said, that was my sergeant, and he came out and he said, there's your posting order, you're going to Germany. That was on a Wednesday, I think, or towards the latter end of the weekend. They went home for a long weekend, and I was really quiet. And my mum and dad were saying, you know, what's wrong? And I was like, I just don't want to go to another country on my own. And they bought me a necklace or a bracelet, I think it was, which I've still got. And they were like, you're going to be fine, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, got on a plane and off I went. I met somebody at the airport who was travelling with going to Germany, but was on the same flight as me, so we kind of buddied up a little bit there. And I remember getting off I never forget this. I remember getting off the flight. Obviously, I didn't speak a word of German. I couldn't read German, but I could understand it. My nan was German. She was actually in the Second World War as a spy. Actually, in the Second World War, it's quite cool. So we did converse sometimes in German. And so I got off the aeroplane. I had literally no idea where to go. Of course, you got to think we didn't have mobile phones back then. There was no such thing as emails. We only did faxes and telephone calls. So, you know, I had no way of contacting or where I should be or what the fuck is going on. I've landed in another country and no one's here to pick me up. What do I look for? Where do I go? So I just kind of hovered out the front. I don't know, we had no idea. I was expecting a bus of some sort or a person to be stood there going, Private Hursey or whatever. I didn't know, had no idea. Anyway, this guy come up to me in a yellow shirt on, and in his yellow shirt, in his top left pocket, he had a Christmas tree, you know, the smelly Christmas trees you get for cars.
Yeah.
He had one of those in his pocket. I looked at him and I thought, what the fuck is that? And he goes, are you Joe? And I said, yeah. He says, oh, I'm here to pick you up. Come on, and off you get. And I went, all right. So I got in the car, and there was about 3 of us in the car. Anyway, I looked at him and I said, I've got to ask you, what the fuck is that in your top pocket? And he goes, well, I broke down. I couldn't get a hotel room, so I started to smell, so I just bought a Christmas tree. And I was like, brilliant. What a genius, you know. So yeah, that was that. Anyway, got dropped off at Bielefeld. Brilliant, isn't it? I never forget. I don't know his name, but he was brilliant.
That is good.
I know, isn't it? What a great idea. So then I get some.
Sorry, it's tickled me.
It's good, isn't it? I get to 7 Transport Regiment, and I love the first thing I saw was the red and white curbs. If anyone's ever been to Bielefeld, will know what I mean. You stand at the camp gate and you look up the road, and all the curbs are red and white. That was our colours. And I was like, yes, this is bullshit city. This is where I want to be. You know, that's what I thought the army would be. You know, and it exceeded my expectations. I went into the guard room, and there was a big sign saying guard room and big silver. It was just fantastic. And I remember saying, obviously, bearing in mind, I'd just come from training, so everyone was corporal, lance corporal, sergeant. Everyone was, you know, ranks and stood to attention all the time, all that. And yeah, I went into the guard room and I said, I've been posted in. I don't know where to go. So yeah, that was sorted. Got me over to, I was at 9 Squadron. And then, yeah, the start of my career, proper career. It was great. Germany was fantastic. It was really good. Had its lows, but it had some highs, and a lot of the people that were at 7 Reg, obviously we're now out of Germany, but those people that were at 7 Reg, they shaped my career of who I wanted to be and where I wanted to be and all that. So yeah, and I'm still in touch with most of them now. I think the saddest time whilst I was at Germany was there was a minibus accident from oh God, I can't remember the year. I want to say 1999, but it may have been 98. I'm not sure. But there was a minibus accident with three people died in the minibus accident. So long story very, very short. We basically were in the RLC competition to go back to Grantham and compete in a basketball competition. And of course, everyone was like, yeah, I'll go back. It was a girls' competition, women's competition. So me being sporty, because I was quite sporty, I was like, yeah, I'll go. So jumped on the minibus. There was me, Tan. There was about 15 of us, 14 of us, including the driver. We were just about to leave, and my sergeant came out and said, "Oh, you're on detail tomorrow, so I'm driving." So I was like, "But I'm going to a competition in Grantham," and he was like, "No, you're not." So, so I got taken off the bus. But I said to the girls on the bus, "Look, just ring me when you get home or when you get back to Grantham. Just let us know that you got there, okay?" And it was the last conversation I had with three of them: Tanya, Emma, and another girl. They all died in a minibus accident. So what happened was they'd run out of fuel. And so the driver had pulled over. I'm not going to say the driver's name, but the driver had pulled over, and a lorry they were in France, and a lorry driver fell asleep, and he went straight into the back of them. Tanya, my best friend, was sitting at the back of the bus. She was in the sleeping bag I'd lent her, and the bus basically the seats folded over her, so she was crushed. Emma, she was crushed also, but underneath one of the seats. And the other girl, she was only 17, I think she was. She died outright as well. There was obviously multiple injuries as well. When we saw the pictures and when we got all the belongings back, I think the hardest thing for me was that, one, they were all girls, and there wasn't a lot of girls in the army at that time. So we all shared the same accommodation, was all in the same room, and it was really sad, obviously, you can imagine. But I had survivor's guilt from that, but didn't know I had survivor's guilt from it until later on in life, because I was supposed to be on that bus. All my belongings were on that bus. So when I got the stuff back, it was either covered in blood or glass from the wreckage, or the pages were torn, and there was like books that I'd lent them, or I think it was a B1 folder, our trade training course. And yeah, it was just so tragic. So the ages ranged from 21 down to 17. Tanya Braithwaite, Emma Levinson were my two friends, because they in the accommodation, and the other girl was from 17 Squadron. I didn't know her that well, but it's really tragic loss of life, and it was pretty much a really big low for me, because I'd lost two friends, but also, like I say, I was survivor's guilt, but I had no idea about it until later on in life. It started to affect me.
Okay.
That was a real tragedy, and that was the first time in my career it was a mass thing that I dealt with. But obviously I didn't deal with it, because obviously it later on came to bite me on the arse.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was probably my low there. But then I did have lots of highs, and I went skiing to Bavaria.
Well, I was going to ask, how long was you there for? What was that posting time frame?
I think I want to say, I know that I got posted to Northern Ireland in Millennium. So I think I was there from like 96, 7. It was Easter, 96 I got there. I only remember it was Easter because it snowed. And I was in Northern Ireland by the Millennium, but I'd only just got there. So
96 to 2000, something like that.
Roughly, yeah.
Roughly, okay. And you've mentioned, obviously, a real sad point that was a low. And you've just started to talk about some of the highs. So what opportunity did you have whilst you were out in Germany? You mentioned skiing, but anything you want to highlight?
We went skiing nearly every year, because we weren't too far from the Bavarian mountains. We went there all the time. Adventure training, we went there probably about 3 times a year. That was fantastic. We we went to Poland on exercise. We went to Senilager. My cousin was stationed out in Senilager at the time as well. He was 2LI, which I don't think is 2LI anymore, but I'm not sure. I was attached. Oh God, I was attached to Devon and Dorset on an exercise, and one of the guys came along, and I was driving an ambulance, right? And back in that day, you didn't have to have ambulance training or anything like that. It was a Land Rover with a box on the back, but it had a big red cross on it, ambulance. And so I was on exercise with them, and this guy, I'll never forget this. This guy come up to me, and he said, he goes, "Oh, well, we're going on the range. Could you follow us onto the range? Because obviously they're firing live ammunition. So we had an ambulance stationed on each range. Yeah, no drama. So in the cab with me was a medic. So we're sitting on this range, and this guy come up, and he had blood pouring out of his mouth. And I was like, what the fuck's going on here? His name was Adam. Adam Cleves, his name was. And I said to him, Adam, I said, what's gone on? And he's trying to talk with his mouth. And I was like, what's wrong? He'd bitten the end of his tongue off where he'd put where he'd put his top hatch down. He'd bitten into his tongue, and he'd bit the end of his tongue off, and he'd had it in his hand and everything. Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, that was quite good. So that was my first sort of look at gore, that was quite good. As I said, I did various amount of exercises, loved it. I really enjoyed it. I got all my trade courses there. So when you get to your unit, you're normally a B3, which is like the lowest person of the trade. Monday mornings used to get inspected, and if you were really good, well turned out, you get to be the sergeant major's bitch for the day, where you didn't have to do anything, no work or nothing like that. It was great. So everyone strived to be the bitch, because you just got made to run around with letters and type them up and drink coffee all day. He doesn't want to do that, instead of being out in the park in the freezing fucking cold. So yeah, so that was, people tried to do that. People strive to do that, but also the incentive was to have good turnout kit. And then you then at some point would do your B2, which is B2 is an upgrade obviously from B3, and your B2 basically you do it on the job, so it's on the job learning, training, and that kind of stuff. And then eventually you do your B1 in-house, because we had a training wing. So I did my B1 eventually, which is obviously a top level of a driver. So I was really lucky in the sense that I did my B2, my B3, my B2, my B1 all at one place whilst I was posted there. I got posted over to Northern Ireland whilst I was there twice, and that was good fun as well.
What, for like a short period of time? Or?
I did 6 months in 4-6 workshops attached to the REME. Which I loved.
Where was that? 4-6
was in Kinniger, which I don't know if still there. I think it might have closed down, but I don't know. But that was great fun. That's where I first ate soda bread, which was really bad for you, but I loved it. And the first place I ever started to drink, I can't remember the local beer, but it was like the local Irish lager, and it was like a hop. It was lovely, really nice beer. And we had a little pub down the road, and I think it was called the Ugly Duck or the Duck Inn or something like that. And I remember one night we had to sign in and out when we went out anywhere. And the pub down the road, the Mucky Duck, that was it, the Mucky Duck. And we had to sign in. If we were going to the Mucky Duck, it was inbounds because it was in an inbounds area. But if you went to the pub, you still had to sign out, and they only were allowed a maximum of like 8 or 9 people or something in that pub. Harp, that was the drink I was drinking. There you go. I knew it would come back to me. And we were in the pub, and if you imagine back in, you're talking like early 90s, so in the pub, the windows were had tiny little windows, like yay big. And in there, I was sat in there talking to somebody, I can't even remember who, and somebody started smashing up the windows. So, and then whilst they smashed up the windows, they shoved a petrol bomb through the window. And then the landlord, obviously knowing that we were squaddies, and we're about 600 metres from the camp, so obviously we're all squaddies in there, and he's like, right, everyone get upstairs. So we ran upstairs into the loft. Looking back at it, it was such a stupid idea, because it could have been a trap, couldn't it, Anyway, he managed to, it wasn't a big fire, lucky enough. He just managed to put it out. Obviously, the old Bill came and we scarpered, we went back to camp, back to the pub in camp. And, it was, again, at the time, it was really exciting because it was like, ooh, you do, that's what you think about. Again, later on in life, it started to catch me up. But yeah, that was good fun. I loved it. again went adventure training there with REME workshops, and it was the first time also for me that I'd been attached to another corps, because I'd only ever known RLC. Apart from the Devon and Dorset's exercise, wasn't really a Devon and Dorset. I was still with the RLC there. So yeah, it was good fun. And yeah, apart from that one thing, but we had lots of downs and ups. But yeah, it was a good laugh. It's good fun.
Did that go quick? The 6 months?
Yeah, do you know what? It did go quick. I was just thinking actually. There was one of my corporals there who was an absolute arsehole to me, and it did go quick until he turned up. I was basically, during the day, I was a glorified taxi driver. So we drove civvy vehicles, moving people to and from the ranges and to and from the airport. So I was armed everywhere I went, but obviously I was in civvy clothes. The biggest thing that I remember from that tour was there was a guy who was an absolute arsehole to me. I don't know why, but he didn't like me for whatever reason. And it was my time when I was due to go on my R&R. And he went up and slashed the tyres on the car that was supposed to take me to the airport. He was my sergeant. He then also cancelled my R&R, cancelled my flight, but didn't tell me. So I went to get into the car, obviously get taken to the airport, and I found the tyres were slashed. But he'd manipulated it in a way where all the other cars were out on detail, so I had no way of getting to the airport, so I paid for a taxi. So I paid for a taxi to get there, and lucky enough, the airport was only up the road. He had said, obviously because he'd cancelled my flight, I got to the airport and I wasn't on the flight, so I had to get a taxi back. And I went to see him and I said, my flight's been cancelled, unbeknown to me that obviously he'd cancelled it. And he was like, you'll have to go next week instead then, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, he was on purpose being an arsehole and making my life difficult. But lucky enough, because I was a little bit older, I did stand up to him and I sort of said to him, why are you being such a dick? What have I done that's so bad? And he said, I just don't like you. And I was like, okay, but you don't have to like me. You're my sergeant. You don't have to like me. I don't particularly like you, but I respect you. And he didn't. After that, we didn't really speak. And yeah, that was again. It seemed to be a low bit. I guess it happens to everybody, but it was just a bit shit. He made that really good tour a bit shit for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did my 6 months and said goodbye. And obviously, he didn't come to my leaving do. Funny enough. But yeah, I had a good time there. I had a good laugh there. It was good fun.
And then back to Germany.
Yeah, then back to Germany. And then 8 months later, I was posted to Northern Ireland.
Okay.
I then went out to Northern Ireland. I went to 54 Squadron. And this was when my fun in my life started to get better.
And just a question on that. What's the difference between a posting
and a tour?
And a tour, yeah.
So a tour, you get attached to another unit for a certain amount of time. It could be 3 months, could be 6 months, could be 8 months, or it could even be 2 years. But at that time, we were doing 6 monthly tours. So I was attached to 4-6 workshops out in Northern Ireland for 6 months.
Okay.
Then you go back to your parent unit, they call it. And then I then went on a posting. And a posting normally, it can be in between 2 to 3 years. It depends on your trade and also depends on the location and your promotion. So if you are in a job where you're a driver, let's say as me, most of them are 3-year postings because you're unlikely to pick up in the next sort of 2 years. But what they can do is you might pick up in the 3rd year. So in those 3 years, they might be an opening as well that will come up. So if an opening comes up in another squadron within that same posting, they'll promote you and then put you into that posting. Does that make sense? So it's kind of basically you're filling the holes where they need you to go.
Okay.
And if you're lucky enough.
So going out there for a posting, was you going to an RLC camp? Yeah.
So I went to Lisbon at this point, and in Lisbon was the HQ of Northern Ireland. So we had 14 int were there. We had lots of sneaky beaky people that I had no idea that were sneaky beakies. They were that good. We had the education centre. We had lots of married quarters there. We had Pioneer Department there. So we had a lot of camps, a lot of places on one camp. And I was attached to a squadron called 54 Squadron. And we dealt with VIPs in Northern Ireland. So essentially, it was a staff car post. I hadn't done my staff car course, but I got there as a lance corporal. Or no, I got there as a private soldier, and then about 2 weeks later, I came off the lance corporal board. So I got promoted, and I was like, "Oh shit, am I going to get posted out?" And they were like, "No, we'll just open up for you here." Brilliant. So I stayed there, and I was there for, I think it was about 4 years. So I really enjoyed it there. Again, like any posting, you always have your ups and downs. But my lowest, I think, was that I was involved in the Lisbon bombings. And for me, I lucky enough, I wasn't injured at all in Northern Ireland. But what I did see was people being injured. The day of the Lisbon bombing, the IRA had gone into the camp over a certain amount of time, and they were doing some work in camp. And what they'd done is in the big oil drums, like plastic drums, they had filled them with Semtex over time. So I don't know how long, but it must have been over some time, quite a long time, I would have thought. And they filled it with Semtex. And then they took it into this, like a couple of car parks, but the main car park outside my squadron. And I'm just thinking, I think that might have been when I was on tour, not whilst I was posted out there. Either way, they parked it in one of the car parks, and there was 2 cars with the barrels in the back, and they exploded, and they took out. I think the hole in the car park was something like 10 foot deep, 11 foot deep. And then they took up, obviously, most of the cars. 54 Squadron had just been built, so all the roof had come off it, all the tiles and the windows and everything. It was fucking carnage. And one of my friends was posted there, who was on tour there, and she was walking past the actual building, and a slice of a sign had come off, a stop sign had come off, and it sliced into the back of her head, and obviously gave her a brain injury. And I remember going to see her in hospital, and she held up this little bottle, and like a specimen bottle, and in that specimen bottle was the little bit of the sign, and she still got some of the sign in her head.
Wow.
But yeah, that was, again, it was a low. But because it didn't involve me as such directly, it wasn't a big thing, and I'm okay to talk about it, but I did see the after effects on what it did to people and the carnage that was involved in it. There was, we had a mattress store nearby where the bomb explosion went off, and I remember someone smashing down the mattress store to get people onto the mattresses so they could take the people away from the actual first explosion. So once the first explosion went off, they then put another device where the secondary explosion was going to go off. So they knew exactly where the areas of evacuation were. So it was about half a mile away from the first explosion. If there was an explosion there, everyone had to move up to this other location. But everyone knew where that location was. They put a secondary device there, and a second one went off as well. So yeah, it was horrific, and obviously you see the pictures on the news and what have you. And then Pioneers were in charge of the VCP, so they got obviously scrutinised, but they couldn't have known. They were bringing it in the sandwiches, Semtex looking like butter. They were bringing it in tiny bits of, you're not going to search through someone's sandwich box, are you, So, yeah, very clever. And of course, I'm talking back in the 90s when the Troubles were still classed as the Troubles, so it was interesting. It was actually during my posting there, I was attached to 40 Commando as well. That was a dream. That was an absolute dream.
So this is the second time you're out there. So
yes.
This is the early 2000s.
Yeah. So
okay.
And I was attached to 40 Commando, and I remember one time back in the day. That time there was a Diet Coke advert floated around, and the guy just had his shorts on, and he was bare topped, and he would drink an ice cold Diet Coke. And now, if you think of that, right, I'm in what do they call a cookhouse? What do they call it? The Marines call it something different, don't they? Is it a galley?
Maybe. Yeah.
Galley. I think it's a galley, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's wrong, I'm sorry, Royal Marines. But I'm sure it's a galley. Anyway, we're in the galley, cookhouse, right? And the alarms start going off, and the alarms is to alert us that we need to get out and get to our vehicles and stuff like that. So, or a mortar attack, right? Because we're literally where we were right next to the Maze prison. So we start going out, and it was a really hot day, which is really unusual for Northern Ireland. And we go outside, and all these guys were playing volleyball, and they all had their tops off, and they were drinking Diet Coke. And I was like, I looked over at my mate Nicky Whelan, and I went, "Fuck me, mate! This is like a Diet Coke advert." And we were laughing our heads off. Anyway, we get into our vehicles and off we go. But yeah, I remember being attached to 40 Commando, and that was awesome. There was Nicky Whelan was putting up this tent, and there was a civvy car next to us, and we were basically we'd gone to an area where we were pitching up for the day, and we put some tents up, not for us to kip in, but it was tents up for some civvies, because we were helping with some sort of crisis that had gone on. I can't remember if it was a flood or something, but we were helping with something anyway, and we were putting those camp cots up. And anyone who's ever put an army camp cot up, you've got to have about 25 muscles in one arm, and so she's trying to put it together. Anyway, she puts it together and she lets go of it, and it ended up in the back of this civvy car. Right? Of course, I'm pissing myself laughing. I've got tears rolling down my eyes, and she's a Scouser, and she's going, fucking hell. I was just like, oh my, it was brilliant. Anyway, yeah, we got in touch with the person whose car it was, and it was all right. But yeah, that was Nicky Whelan. She was brilliant. So yeah, that was, there's so many stories I could tell. But there was one guy, I remember we went on Eagle VCP with 40 Commando, and the Sergeant Major come up and he goes, right, who wants to come on over Eagle VCP? And I'm like, me being Mel, what the fuck's an Eagle VCP? And he says, well, basically, you get in a helicopter and you fly off somewhere, you land, and then you do VCPs. And I was like, oh, yeah, I love some of that shit. Fucking right. Well, being in the RLC, you don't get opportunities that come around like that. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I love that. So anyway, I then get lumbered to carry the ECM equipment, electronic countermeasures. Basically, it sort of deteriorate, sort of fends off any sort of signals being passed through. So I've got this bit of kit. And in the ECM kit, you've got this massive long aerial, about 2 foot long. And the helicopter's coming down. And this guy comes and looks at me, and he's got rather large ears, would be the only way I could describe it, right? He's got rather large ears. Anyway, this helicopter comes down, and the downdraft of a helicopter, if you've never been underneath one, you know about it. Everything rattles and moves. Anyway, because his ears were massive, they were flapping around. Oh my God, they're flapping around in the air. Anyway, I'm looking at him, take my aerial off, I'm saying to him. And he's going, what? I said, I pissed myself. I'm trying not to laugh. Anyway, we get on the aircraft with his ears still flapping. We get onto the aircraft and he goes, what were you laughing at? And he goes, your fucking ears, mate. They're like fucking dumb. Oh my God, yeah. So yeah, that was we did a couple of Eagle VCPs and what have you, and that was good fun. I was the first female actually to do an Eagle VCP in Northern Ireland.
I'm crying.
Oh, I just that vision I just can never take away. But yeah, God bless him. His ears were so big. I don't even know who the guy was, but yeah.
Anyway, back to you being the first female to do that.
Yes, I was. Yeah, I was the first. I was the first female to do Eagle VCPs in Northern Ireland. Yeah, and I was the first female to be attached to an infantry class as an infantry unit.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was quite good. We were patrolling through the streets of. I can't remember where it was, but it was all right. To be fair, it was a nice little area. But I remember this corporal, and I think I was a lance corporal at the time, and he said, and I had iron sights. For those, it's basically a really shit way of firing a weapon. But everybody else in the whole British Army were using SUSATs,
yeah,
and the RLC were using sort of iron sights. So. Apparently we never wanted to shoot anyway, so mind you, to be fair, in a battle, if they got to us, then there'd be something wrong, wouldn't there, really? So I got it, and it's only literally when I was getting out of the army in 2017 they started giving us SUSAT. So yeah, so my whole career. Anyway, going back to the story, I was attached. This force crew said to me, right, Joe, whatever you do not leave my side. And I went, mate, do you think I'm ever going to leave your fucking side? You've got a SUSAT, I've got an iron sight. I ain't going anywhere. And literally I stuck to him like glue. And there is a picture somewhere in my house of me kneeling on the floor next to him. And he's looking at me, goes, you all right? And I went, yeah, I'm shitting bricks, but I'm fine. But I loved it. Absolutely. So much experience,
Yeah.
But yeah, when he said, don't leave my side, I went, mate, don't worry about it. I'm not leaving your side. Oh yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's a good tour.
So it sounds like it was another period of time, ups and downs, but some real good memories from that time there.
Yeah, because we were right next to the Maze prison as well, and it was still working then, and we still had the prisoners in. So we heard the alarms go off nearly every day when they were trying to escape and stuff like that. So that was also really good as well. Yeah, it's good. It's good
That's
fun.
cool.
Yeah.
And then do you head off somewhere else on promotion or just because of time?
Well, I then go, whilst this was only, it's weird actually, because whilst I was posted out to 54 Squadron, I did a tour within the 54 Squadron. And the tour I did was Northern Ireland tour. So I did another attachment. So let's call it an attachment. So I then was attached to 40 Commandos. I then came back from that they did 6 months in Northern Ireland. So for their 6 months, they get an attachment of us. So we were also doing 6 months as well. So we got, even though we were posted there, within that 2 to 3 years, we then did an attachment to 40 Commando. So they did their 6 months, and then we were able to go back to our parent unit. So it was a tour within a tour, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And so then once we finished with 40 Commando, they all gave us T-shirts and stuff like that, and that was great fun. I'm smiling even just thinking about that too, because it was great. We then went back to 54 Squadron, still in Northern Ireland, and then I was then put onto ECM team, which was just a driver. So we were on fast response. So again, it was really good. And I remember the song that my first ever job we went to was in Lisbon, and we went out to a tasking, and it was a ECM kit found in the back of a car. So back in then days we had pagers, all right? So my pager went off, and off I ran, got into the car, drove round to where EOD were, 321 EOD. We're going down the B10, I think it was B10,000, B101, something like that, which is basically anyone who's been to Northern Ireland will know what that road is. And it's like a snake road, but it goes up and down. And I've got blue lights going, and it was my first ever job going to hammering it down that road. And the song we had on was 21 Seconds to Go. Got 21 seconds to get that one. And so, yeah, that was my first ever song and what we went to a job on. So we got there and sorted out whatever it was. Bearing in mind, I was just the driver. So I say just the driver. I was the driver, but I had no sort of qualifications in EOD. But there was opportunity for me to do my number 2, and I could have done it, but I'm dyscalculia. So when it comes to numbers, I'm really bad with numbers. So dyscalculia is the same as dyslexia, but with numbers.
Okay.
So, if I see a 6, sometimes I might see an 8, so stuff like that.
And what are you saying about number 2?
So number 2...
It's not having a shit, is it?
No, there's definitely not having a shit. But it is a shit job, to be fair. But a number 2, if I'm right, and if it's wrong, I do apologise. But number 2, basically, you have a number 1, which is the person who goes and diffuses a device,
okay.
And a number 2 assists. So
right.
Obviously I can't go too technical into it because I don't know.
Okay.
But basically, it's 2 parts to it. You've got number 1 or number 2, and if you're a number 2, you've done a little bit of a course, and it isn't, obviously it's a device, so it's in lots of numbers and chemical, that kind of stuff. So, and it wasn't my bag. There was opportunity for me to do it. I didn't take it up, and then I finished my sort of stint with EOD, and a job came up working as the GOC's wife's driver. And the GOC was the General Officer Commanding for the whole of Northern Ireland. And because of his security status, he had a driver, but his family also had a driver as well. And that was such a laugh. I had such a good time there. Ended up driving her around, and she wasn't, she wasn't stuck up or anything. She was just so down to earth. And her kids were as well. And they just accepted the fact that they were under security reasons. They had to have drivers, and we were all armed as well, and we all had bodyguards with us and everything else. And they just accepted the fact, but they accepted it gracefully. It was a pain for them because they couldn't have a normal life, whatever normal was, but for them. But obviously they accepted the fact, and they were really gracious about it. They were fantastic. So it was really good postings, really good job as well. And then I went on to be a secondary driver for the GOC. So in class, we were classed as staff car drivers, but I was qualified in the blue light driving, close protection driver. I went away to Longmoor to do my close protection driving, another 6-week course. And on that course, actually, I had a Nepalese guy who tried to put a dishwasher tablet into the washing machine, and then a washing tablet into the dishwasher machine. We all lived in like his house together and stuff. Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, so that was really good fun. I really enjoyed it.
So just with that course, is that where you get to reverse fast and spin the car and shoot out the window?
Yeah, doing J-turns.
Do you want to share some stuff? Because I've never been on that course myself.
I kind of, it's like everybody's dream, innit, to J-turn a car and shoot out of it and stuff like that. But obviously we did it in a more controlled way.
And what was it called?
It was called, I think at the time it was called Close Protection Course. I think it was just called that. But I don't know what it's called now, but it was in Longmoor and it was a 4-week long course. It was quite a long course. But that enabled us to drive blue lights fast and that kind of stuff. So the whole point of the course was to be able to drive safely to an area or to a place with blue lights, not injuring anyone or not killing anyone. And so it's not a qualification that's recognised in Civvy Street, but it is a qualification that's recognised in the military. And so I did that. So the first week was kind of driving. They were getting used to our driving style, and we went back to 10-2 driving, and not being assessed, but just getting used to proper real driving, as it should be. The second week was then we started to ramp it up, where we did some close protection drills. So there was a 3-car drill and a 2-car drill. So a 3-car drill would be 3 cars, obviously, and the middle car would be the VIP car. So it was the first car's job and the last car's job to protect that car, the middle car. So in the middle car would be a pretend VIP, and the last car would be what we call bringing up the rear. And it's not a rude term or anything like that, but would be basically blocking any cars to get close to them. And so if you imagine if you were a bird looking down at the car, you draw a circle around that car. We were that close protection in a car. So the first car's job was to move people out of the way. The last car's job was to make sure that nobody got close to the VIP's car. So we did that for a week. If you imagine, we're doing that on a car park or on the airfield, and then we go out into the street or into the motorways and stuff. And you can imagine it's quite arduous task, but what we do have is we do have our blue lights going as well, so that people are aware, so we're not going to cause an accident. However, added on to that, we also do a commentary drive as well. So we're doing, so the first 3 days, I think, is driving as a 3 and 2-car drills. 2 cars exactly the same, but obviously with 2 cars. We also then, the last couple of days and then the beginning of the last week, we also then do a commentary drive. So that commentary drive is as we're driving along, we're literally going to my left, I can see a pedestrian with a dog. On my right, I can see a car's indicating to the right. And we had to do a commentary drive for 10 minutes. And I still use the technique now. If I'm getting tired driving, I still use that technique of doing the commentary drive. But a lot of people fail on that. I was okay, but a lot of people fail on that. That was that really. And then the last 4 days is of where it starts to get interesting, and you go into, it's almost like a CQB range, so close quarter battle range, but with cars. So you go into an area, and then there's like, somebody would be, somebody would be smoking a fag or whatever, but he's actually a signaller to another person who's going to come and try and nab the person out of your car. And then you've got to react to it. So they give you a situation and you have to react to it. And that's your assessment. You drag the VIP into an area or you reverse out of it, but you can't reverse because there's a car behind you and you can't go forward. So what do you do? And so it's good. It was good fun. Cool. And that's where you do the J turns, and that's where you get taught to do all the J turns, and all that kind of stuff, and getting out of an area. And that's a laugh. Really, cool. You smell rubber, and the gearbox is absolutely trashed. It's fantastic. Yeah, great fun. Really
the weapons
good fun.
Come into it.
Yeah, we get pistols. We've also got, I can't remember the pistols that I think not Brownings we use, but I can't remember the other mini weapons we use. I want to say mini me, but I can't remember. But yeah, we had shotguns, and we fired. Obviously, we went on the ranges as well. We fired shotguns. We fired. some little mini machine. It was brilliant. Yeah, it was great fun. Loved it.
Sounds
Brilliant.
good course.
Oh, it was awesome. We fired with silencers as well, only so that we could get used to the noise, because some people, obviously, if they're going to assassin someone, they're going to shoot with a silencer, but they wanted us to understand even though it's a silencer, there is still a noise, and they wanted us to get used to the noise as well. So yeah, it was really good fun.
Cool.
Great course. Yeah, good fun.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So where'd you go after Northern Ireland? Because just to mention about that, that's kind of really cool. And I didn't know that happened.
Yeah.
That essentially it's like you say, mini postings within the postings whilst you're in the same area. Kind of really cool.
Yeah.
Weird, but really cool for the RLC, I suppose.
Yeah, that is one of the good things about the RLC, because there's a lots of trades within the RLC. We get attached to a lot of units as well, so that was quite a good thing that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
So after Northern Ireland, where did I go? I think I went. Yes, I did. I went over from Northern Ireland. I then went for an interview to a job working for the director of RLC, and because I was in a VIP squadron. They wanted a driver who has got VIP experience. So my 3 years had actually come to a close anyway. So I went for an interview with Brigadier Darby Welsh, and he was the nicest man I've ever met, and his family, who are on my Facebook, actually, on my social media, still in touch with them. And I went over for an interview with him, went out for a little drive. He said, yes, I'd like to give you my job. And so I then went over to Deepcut. I had a house in Deepcut, and I was his driver for about 2.5, 4 years maybe.
Nice. And what was his role, sorry?
His role was the director of the RLC, and at that time we were having lots of there was lots of inquests into the Deepcut deaths.
Okay.
Which is so that was predominantly what his role was. It was getting a bit tiresome by this point, but that was his role, was trying to keep that, not undercover, but trying to keep a lid on it and keep it to a level where it wasn't getting out of control. Because we had people that at Deepcut all the time. So when I say people at Deepcut, I mean protesters at Deepcut, the parents at Deepcut, turning up every day saying, demanding they wanted to speak to the director at RLC. And but the director of RLC's job was to oversee everything within my corps. Then we had within the building we had the head RSM, so director RSM. We had the director adjutant, RLC's adjutant. So basically, it was the hub of where the RLC came from. So we had doctoring there, SO1, SO2, SO3 doctoring. For those who don't know what that is, it's a title for those who develop policies, develop training programs, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was the head office of the RLC is the easiest way to describe it.
Okay.
And I loved that job. It was a little bit boring because it wasn't quite exciting as Northern Ireland. I wasn't always on tenterhooks, and I never was armed. But we got to drive lots of different vehicles, and I did drive Montgomery's vehicle. It was Montgomery's vehicle when it went on to the sands, obviously at France. And what happened was that vehicle then went into. It just got decommissioned and forgotten about. Anyway, whilst I was there was a vehicle specialist who worked in one of the other buildings, and he was able to. They found out that the guy who had that vehicle was trying to get rid of it. So the museum was right next to us as well. And the RLC museum wanted to take it on board. So I can't remember his name, but he and I went down to pick up this vehicle, put it on a low loader, and we took it back to the museum. And he did most of the work. He was a vehicle specialist. But between us, we got the vehicle up to a really good standard. And the vehicle's still in the museum today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I forgot about that, actually. No,
there you go.
Yeah, so I can't remember the guy's name, but so that vehicle's still being used, and he's in the museum now. Got to drive that onto a parade square at Pirbright, which was quite cool. And interestingly, the guy that we had a Chelsea pensioner that was with us when we did a parade, and his name was Swift. His second name was Swift, and he said to me, he said to me, when you get into third gear, you have to double the clutch. I looked at him, and for those who don't know, double the clutch, you basically you put your foot down twice on the clutch, and then the gear will go in. And I looked at him and I said, how do you know that? And he goes, because I used to drive this vehicle when it was on the sands at France. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah, fantastic, isn't it?
Wow.
I mean, how would you know that? How would you know that? And so he got out of the car and I was chatting to him afterwards and I was like, what a story, you know? But yeah, that was that. So that was good fun.
Crazy.
So yeah, that pretty undeterred really. That tour was pretty nonplussed. There was nothing much to. I did learn a lot though. I learned a lot about the Corps. So you got to think about now. I'm about 26, you know, or 27, and I've obviously matured a little bit. I'm getting drunk every night in Bielefeld, but.
And what rank are you?
I'm thinking now I think I was a corporal, full screw.
Full screw. Okay.
Yeah. So we got to a point where I was starting to grow up a little bit, which was a bit rubbish, but it happens, doesn't it? So I started to grow up a little bit, and then I'm sure I got promoted as a full screw. Then it was decided that I had to leave where I was. I then started working. Sorry, go back a little bit. Brigadier Darby Welsh then retired. And then Brigadier Rook took over. Brigadier Rook was brilliant. He lived in London. But it was fiercely independent, so he'd drive himself places. I would drive him obviously for different events and stuff like that, but yeah, 9 times out of 10 he drove himself everywhere, so it was great. But he is also, I still see him very frequently, and he's still friends with me and that sort of stuff. So I've made lifelong friends throughout the army, like yourself. You know how long we known each other, so I don't know, you just make some friends along the way. And obviously I'm maturing now, so it came to a point where it was time for me to go. I then went over to 10 Regiment, and I was the only female British soldier there at 10 Regiment, because it was a Nepalese regiment.
Where was that?
In Aldershot.
Okay.
I hated it because I couldn't speak Nepalese. So I was only there 8 months anyway. Not even that. I think it was about 6 months. I was only there 6 months because we were told that 10 Reg was going to be closing down. And it was going to be made into a Nepalese regiment. So I didn't have much choice but to bugger off. And so I then went to Abingdon, which was okay. It was all right. I was there as a full screw. Again, Abingdon is in the arse end of nowhere in Oxford. It was an all right posting. I went to all 3 squadrons whilst I was there. Again...
So what time, what year is this?
I was just thinking then.
Give us a...
I want to say, well, we've done 2000. I want to say it was the latter end of 2000. I want to say 2010, the latter end of 2010, 11.
Okay.
11, 12, 13. Yeah, about that. Yeah.
About that.
Yeah.
All right.
So I was at Abingdon.
How long was that for in total?
That ended up being a... No, I tell a lie, actually. Ignore that. I'm lying completely. I went to London.
What, before Abingdon?
Yes. So now this makes sense. Right. So whilst I was at 10 Reg, I then went for another interview. And the interview this time was... I couldn't really miss that whole complete career path then. This timeline now, I went to an interview in London because a job came up for working with the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester.
Okay.
So I was like, who the hell are they, start off with, because no one's ever heard of them. And I then looked and I thought, oh, actually, he's quite important. He's the Queen's first cousin. So the Queen had an auntie and her Alice, and the Alice had 2, I know there's a song there, but then she had 2 or 3 children, and Richard was one of them, okay, and Richard was the Queen's cousin. So I thought, I am never going to get a job working in the royal household. I'm too common. Right? I come from Hertfordshire. I never. It's not going to happen to me. Anyway, I went for the interview. I got the job.
Nice.
I was really surprised. Right. Even my family were like, "How the fuck did you get that job?" You know, and I was like, "I don't actually know. I think they must have been desperate." But they anyway got the job, and that was an eye opener. That was a real eye opener. I think obviously you and I, Gav, we know how hard the royal family work. We know that, but to some people, and I'm going to be totally honest, before I was really ignorant to the fact of how hard they really do work. And it's a shame that I didn't know, because I think I'd have actually had a lot more knowledge about it. But prior to me going for the interview, I did a bit of homework about what their charities were and stuff like that. And I obviously found out that they had between them, they had 102 charities between them, and then some together as well. So if you imagine, their daily routine was pretty hefty. And I then, anyway, going back, I finished my tour at 10 Reg. As I say, it was only 6 months. I then went over to 20 Squadron, which was the squadron that looked after the VIPs in London. So you had obviously had the squadron itself had drivers. They would then be attached to, I don't know, the GOC of London. Then you had somebody who would be attached to the Admiral of London. Then you had somebody who was attached to the Royal Household. But within that Royal Household, there was actually two of us who were attached. Because the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester he was an honorary colonel of my corps. That's how he was entitled to a driver. All right, so there I am. We also had the Prince of York, I think it was, Duke of York, whatever. One of the other princes anyway was up there. He also was entitled to have a driver. So we had two of us that were there. And so, yeah, I worked directly for the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. I had a little flat in Kensington Palace as well.
Nice.
And I had to name drop once. I went into... actually, I can't say that store, so you have to edit that bit out. I went into a certain supermarket, a certain superstore, and I walked into a railing, and as I walked into a railing, it cut my eye, gave me a proper bruise on my eye and everything. And as I came away, and I was like, my eye really hurts. I went to see the manager, and I said, look, one of your railings just caught me in the eye, and it was bleeding. And he was obviously really apologetic, and he said to me, right, he said, I'll send you some flowers or something. And, I said, yeah, okay, number 1A, Kensington Palace. I got flowers, and I got a £30 voucher for whatever it was, a Waitrose, I think it was. And I was like, there we go, I'm going to name drop every time something happens. So, yeah, I used that address quite a lot, but I had to use that address sometimes because I couldn't use the 20 Squadron address, So, yeah, I had a little flat there. Working for the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester was... fantastic, an eye-opener, heartbreaking, exhausting, all in equal measures. Heartbreaking and exhausting because I was their only driver. So if you imagine, I was working with the Duke in the morning sometimes we'd be leaving at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning in his great big Bentley.
Sorry, you were driving that Bentley?
Yeah. Oh, I'll tell you about my Bentley.
Okay, we'll come back to that then.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one as well. So with him in the morning, then I'd have a very quick lunch, and then by the afternoon, I'd be with her doing a job for her. And in the evenings, we were out most evenings, that's evenings on Friday, Saturday and a Sunday. And we were doing evening functions as well. So sometimes my days finished at 7, finished at 2, 3 in the morning. And obviously now I wouldn't be able to do that because obviously it's, breaking laws and stuff. But back in the day, we didn't have those kind of laws. And because I was a soldier, you just get on with it, don't you? And actually, I was absolutely exhausted, and I fell asleep because I lived and worked in Kensington. I went for a walk in Kensington Palace Park Gardens, obviously Hyde Park, or just the park next to it, and I fell asleep in the car park in the park. And one of the guys, the security guy, come up. He was about to lock up, and he said, "You all right?" Woke me up. It was like 8 o'clock at night or something, and I fell asleep. And I'd missed the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester's, one of their trips. And, I was in a lot of trouble for that, obviously. But I did say to him, I'm exhausted, and I went back to 20 Squadron and I said, look, you need to get two of us to drive because I am so tired, And they were like, they didn't want anyone else, and they liked me as a driver, which was fine. But I was exhausted, So, yeah, that was the exhausting bit of it. Heartbreaking in that sense was I loved the job, but I was so exhausted, and I didn't want to do the job anymore because I was exhausted. But so the bit about the Bentley. So before having the Bentley, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester had a really cool car before, and it was a Mondeo, right? that was their official car, right?
You say cool.
Yeah, I was joking. Right? put it this way, right? We went to a function when the Queen was there, right? And we get to a function and all these lavish cars are there, Bentleys and Jags and all that shit. And then we turn up in our Mondeo estate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a Mondeo estate, a green Mondeo estate, and the copper car. Obviously, it's got blue flashing lights, the works. It's got a copper in the car with me. Anyway, the copper who was standing on front gate of the venue we were going to, the Queen's there. He says, "You've got to move on, please." I was like, "No, I'm actually part of this group. Yeah, I know, I'm in a Mondeo." I was like, "Oh shit!" So, but honestly, yeah, got moved on. You got to move on, please. And the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester got out, and they were just like, they were obviously embarrassed more than I was. So I was like, for fuck's sake. Anyway, yeah, so that was that. And then a couple of months, about 6 months later, the Duke calls me to his office and he says, "We're looking at getting a new car." And I was like, secretly, I was like, yes, we get rid of that Mondeo. And he goes, "We've got a choice of either a Bentley or a Jag. What's your thoughts?" I was like, "What? What? You're asking me what you want me to get? What are you?" And he goes, "Well, you're going to be driving it." And I was like, looked at him and I thought, fuck yeah. But of course I went, "Oh, so it's obviously your choice, you know." And he said, no, it's your choice, you choose. And I went, "Oh, it's definitely got to be the Bentley then, so obviously in my bestest English, you know." Anyway, they then send me to Bentley up in Hull, up in wherever it is, right? And they take me around the factory. Right, yeah. And he says, "This is what the colour of the inside of the car was going to be." They showed me how it was all made. I went on a chauffeur's course while I was at Bentley.
Oh, wow.
All paid for by the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. All paid for. And they showed me how to care for the car. They showed me how everything works and all that kind of stuff, and what to expect if this happens. And yeah, I was up there a week and it was great.
Wow.
Absolutely fantastic. And I say, out of the Duke and Duchess's personal pocket, because this was their personal car. It wasn't their car for anything else. It was their personal car. So that was awesome. And the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester were just fantastic to work for, really good to work for. The Duke had such a dry sense of humour and was hilarious. I never forget, he said to me once, he used to am I okay for time? Am I all right?
Yeah, you're good.
So he said to me, he goes, "Joe," he says, "I want you to help me with something." And I was like, yeah, of course, whatever. And he said, I need to rearrange the loft, right? So at this point, I said to him, "Yeah, okay, of course, what would you like me to do?" And he says, "I need to move some wood up to the top floor." And he just recovered from a bike accident, so he couldn't move things as well as he could. He had a fused ankle, so he obviously wasn't as flexible as he was. So in the attic, he had little mini soldiers, right? And these mini soldiers, what he would do is, he was such a bright man. He was an architect by trade, right? But his brother passed away. Died in a helicopter accident, or a plane crash, sorry. So Richard, the Duke, had to take his place. Now that's why he's now the Duke of Gloucester, right? So what he would do, he would read a book and he would memorise the battle from the text, and he would visualise it, and then he'd go up to his loft area and he would then recreate the battle using little lead figures and stuff like that. And the battle, no word of a lie, was, I don't know, must have been about 20 metres across, 30 metres, that
Wow.
way. So you had to go quite a way to go around it. Anyway, he said to me, "Could you bring up some panels of wood?" And they were only like that big, but I lie, they're about 6 metres long, right? And so I go up these really thin stairs, and then I put them underneath my arms so that I'm in the middle of it, so I'm the axis of weight. Anyway, I then go. So now you've got to imagine, a bit of plank of wood is leaning over the battle scene, and the other bit of wood is leaning over a battle scene, and I'm kind of in the middle of it, right? Your face is saying, you know exactly what's going to happen, right? He said to me, "Oh, Joe," he said, "could you just have a look over here?" I then spin, right, and I knock all these fucking things all over the place, right? Not just the front bit, because the back bit's gone as well. I then turn, and the back bit spins around and knocks all the others. And I look at him, and I go, "I am really sorry." And he goes, I think you should just go now, thank you. So I put it down, right? And I was like, absolutely horrified, right? So I go downstairs and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to say? He's going to sack me, he's going to sack me. Anyway, he didn't. We just had a laugh about it. He was fine with it. And but then another time he said to me, he goes, could you give this handwritten letter to the Queen? And this was a common occurrence, and I know I say it like it's every day, but to me it was every day because that's how they did things, all right? So, and it was coming up towards Christmas, so and he said to me, he goes, this must go to the Queen directly, it mustn't go to anyone else, it can go to her private secretary. And they're so traditional in the sense, at the back of it had the wax stamp, right? So I then, at the time, the royal household gave me a little moped to go around and deliver stuff, and it was my way of getting around and doing recce's and stuff like that. And so, yeah, we did that. And I went in my little scooter, and it was only like a 50cc thing, but it was great. All right, so off I went in my little 50cc, and we go down to, we had BP, which was Buckingham Palace, and then we had KP, which was Kensington Palace, right? So all these myths about there's a tunnel that leads straight to and from, that's not true. Otherwise, I would be using that tunnel. All right, so I go down my little moped, go into the gate. So as you're looking at Buckingham Palace, you've got, on the right hand side, you've got a gate, and that gate is the family entrance, the family gate. And then you've got a door on the right hand side, which was for minions like me, who work there. Right, so we go in there, and for those who don't know, most of you probably will not know, but in Buckingham Palace basement, down the floor, there are different lines, and the different lines take you to different people. So, for instance, at the time, the late Queen was obviously still alive. The gold one was for the Queen. Then you had the blue for Prince of Wales, and so on, right? So because the palace is massive, it's easy to get lost. So a lot of people were getting lost, and they even had at that time, I don't know if they've still got it, but they had at that time the old rickety lifts where you close the outer doors and then the inner doors, right?
Okay.
Yeah, still had that. And then there was like a roundy thing you went down to the basement with, right? So I get down to the basement, and I've got, bearing in mind, right, I've got a pair of combat trousers on, not army combat, but blue combat trousers, my army boots, and a biker jacket and a bike helmet in my hand. But I've got this letter which is inside my pocket, okay? So I take the letter out, and I'm walking along, and I'm following the gold line. So as I walk along, like when the milk gets delivered to supermarkets, you get those big cages, right? Inside those big cages is where all the food and all that is for the delivery for the day. And there's a load of them all stacked up on one side. So I obviously have to walk around it, right? So I get to it, and there's someone walking towards me. So I move over, and being the polite person I am, she then walks towards me, and at that time, I'm 5'11". I've shrunk, so that's why I say at that time. So at that time, I'm 5'11", and this little lady must be about 5, maybe just over 5 foot. Anyway, she was walking towards me, and I move out the way, and she said, "Oh, thank you very much." And then I look at her, and it's only the Queen, right? So I was in such an awkward space, I kind of did a bow curtsy at the same time and nearly headbutted her, right? Because it was such an enclosed space. And she's wetting herself laughing. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And she said, no, it's fine, And that was it. So I carried on walking. And I thought, oh, shit, I've got a letter for her. Running back. I said, I've got a letter for you. This is from the Duke of Gloucester. And she went, oh, yes, that's great. Thank you. She took it. And that was that. And I just thought, oh, my fucking God. Probably the only one time I'm going to meet her, and I nearly headbutted her, right? It was something like out of a Benny Hill scene, right? So a couple of weeks later, it was Christmas time. This was coming up to Christmas. They had a big family Christmas dinner, and there was everybody there. So we go into the garden entrance, and I'm sat in the car, like most of the chauffeurs were all sat there, waiting for them to come out. And although we did have conversations with each other, all of us had TVs in our cars, so we all just sat and watched telly, right? So, and why wouldn't you? You've got a seat with a massager and a heat warmer, and why would you not? Right, so I'm sat there watching telly, and I look up, and I'm literally parked directly opposite for about 20, 30 metres away. There's like a set of double doors, and the doors open, and these little corgis come running out. Okay, and I look up, and I think, oh, must be obviously the Queen's dogs going for a little walk around the gardens. Anyway, I then look at my TV. I look up again, and she's there, right next to the window. Again.
Next to your window?
Yeah, next to my window. She was just walking past, but she wasn't knocking on the window or anything. I'm sat in a car. I nearly headbutted the steering wheel. Every time as she's seen me so far, I've been sat in an either awkward position. So I'm like, looking at her, and I thought, oh, for God's sake. So then she just smiles and grins and walks away. Anyway, about 2 or 3 weeks later, after Christmas, we all had our holidays or whatever. And then it was. In fact, it was the start of the garden party. So it was coming up to spring or latter end of spring. And I see her again. And this time, I was going to smash this, right? So I'm waiting again. And she comes out. I get out of the car. And I stand there and I do a little curtsy. It was very, very bad. But I did a curtsy and I said, "Hello, Mum." I said, "This time I'm going to get it right." And she said, "Absolutely perfect." And she got the joke because every time I did so, I either headbutted her or I headbutted the car, and she must have thought, well, who is this dickhead, But yeah, she was fantastic. But so that was me working at the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester's home. It was an eye opener because I didn't know how hard they work, but I do feel that it was so exhausting, and I did get to a point where I was exhausted and I didn't want to do it anymore. So I then got posted to Abingdon.
Okay.
So there's the chunk that I missed out.
That's the chunk
and
you
actually
missed
it's
out.
quite a big chunk, isn't it, really? So yeah.
And how long was that for?
Officially, I only had a 2.5-year posting, but it was extended for 4 years because the Duke and Duchess loved me.
4 years doing that role.
Yeah,
Wow.
which was great, which was lovely that they liked me, but I was knackered,
Yeah.
and I needed to do something different.
Did you have time off? Did you have leave like you would normally, or?
So I did have time off when they both did. If they were representing the Queen in Bali or something like that, unfortunately, I never got to go with them.
Okay.
So if they were away for a week, I used to take that leave with them.
Okay.
And although there were some days where he would go to Scotland all day, and I don't know, bearing in mind he would represent the Queen in a lot of circumstances. So sometimes we would have flights going out of near London. I'm not going to say the airport, but near London. But we also had flights going from Kensington Palace. So if he was near London, I was able to go home because it was near my home. So I was able to go home for the day. But if it was in the palace grounds where the helicopter would come in, I would end up doing a day's work. So there was ups and downs to it, So yeah, if they did have a holiday and it was a personal holiday, I would take my holidays with them.
Okay.
But because they were classed as working royals, they hardly had time off,
Yeah.
But then I did see a lot of the charities that they did, and and their work is just unbelievable. The amount of work they do behind the scenes, and we don't see that. I was in a privy position where I was able to see it. And I class myself as privileged to see that because it was really good. So that was good fun.
And how's the relationship with them? Is it first name terms, or is it kind of like military where you're with officers, and if you work for them, you can maybe be a little bit less?
So they called me Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, they called me Joe and what have you. But with them, it was always Sir or Mum.
Okay.
I never. And they both had a really good sense of humour. They both had a good sense of humour. I remember once where the Duchess was, we were getting ready for, I can't remember if it was a Queen's banquet. There was something massive going on. Anyway, the Duchess had, it was about 2 hours prior to going to the banquet, and we were going down to her hat maker. I think it might have been Ascot. And she said to me, "Could you take me down to the hairdresser to get the hat fitted?" Because she had to have her hair done so that the hat would sit properly. And obviously, it looks better. Yeah, of course, no drama. Sorted that out. Anyway, she gets in the car. I look at her and I think, and we're not really supposed to look at the families, right? You look at them, make sure they're safe, but we're not allowed to eye contact with them.
Okay.
Anyway, I look at her and I'm like, she's got a curler in her hair and she's about to go out in public. I'm like, do I tell her? Don't I tell her? Do I tell her? Don't I tell her? Is it there on purpose? What do I do? Anyway, I'm looking at her and I went, "Mum," I said, "I'm really sorry." I said, "I know we shouldn't do eye contact, but you've still got a curler in your hair." And she said, "Oh my goodness, thank you so much for telling me. Otherwise, I'd have gone and had my picture taken with a curler." She said, "Thank you very much." But I was really unsure what to say, But she, after that, she was like, "Thank you very much." And every year we got a gift. I got a gift at Christmas and my birthday and stuff. So yeah.
Nice.
Do you know what? It was first name terms. Obviously, with them, they called me Jo, and that's their God-given right. But yeah, with them, it was Sir and Mum. And,
Okay.
but yeah, no, I really loved their relationship. I had a very good relationship with them. They gave me a cushion when I left. They gave me lots of presents when I left as well.
That's
so
nice.
yeah, and the fact is that even though I was supposed to be there for 2.5 years or 3 year posting, 2.5 year posting, extended to 4 because everyone who went for the interview they didn't like.
Okay.
So
Fair enough.
I don't. It's a blessing in disguise. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What years was this? Can you remember?
So now we're looking at must be 2025 takes it up to 2011 maybe, something like that. Maybe, I don't know. It's in the middle of a millennium. So let me have a think. So 2021, 2001, 2002. I want to say like 2005, 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, so about 2010. So when I left there. So 2010, yeah, it would be. In fact, it was 2008. There you go. And the reason I know that is because when I got to Abingdon, I went on Telic 10. So therefore, it would have been 2010. So I then left a household and then went to Abingdon.
Okay.
And I was at Abingdon from 2009-ish to about 2013.
Okay.
So yeah, whilst I was there, Abingdon, again, arse end of Oxford, it was an all right posting. Everybody avoids Abingdon whilst in the RLC, but I didn't mind it. It was an all right. It was a good laugh. Met some good people. This is where my life started to take a bit of a turn, if you like. So this is now the latter end of my career as well. I'm kind of coming to the latter end. I'm also now a corporal, but I'm a senior corporal, so looking at sergeant coming off the board. I get posted to a squadron, and you've got to remember, being a full screw female, you've got to work that little bit harder to be noticed. Because one, you get noticed anyway because you're a female, but you have to work harder at your fitness as being a female anyway, because we're not naturally fitter than men. We have to work a little bit harder to be as fit. So being a corporal, I'm expected to be a section commander and expected to lead from the front and expected to make sure that people are following my lead. I had to work that extra harder to get fit. So I was spending a lot of time in the gym, and it was hard work. But it was good because it tested me. It pushed me to my limits, And yeah, so I was there in one of the squadrons for a good chunk of the year. I really enjoyed it. Nothing really to report. Went on exercises. There was nothing interesting about it, really.